Welcome to the Football Critters Podcast. I'm your host, the Otter, and with me is my co-host,
the Bear.
And today it's all about QBs in the 2024 NFL Draft.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you, this is a hell of a quarterback class. You know, I really think we could look back 5 years from now and say this is one of the best ever.
Yeah,
and I think it's probably one of the best ones I've ever watched.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype in this class for sure. Because I mean, I can understand why there's so much talent in each round. It's so enjoyable to see all the different style of QBs, all the different projects.
Oh yeah, there's so many different types. I mean, there's many flavors to choose from here.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a lot of people have different opinions, and you're going to get either a decent backup QB or it's going to fill your hope meter for the upcoming season and future seasons if you get a potential star, because there's about 4 or 5, 6, maybe even a 7 potential stars in this QB draft. Now, we say this every year, and this could be one of the worst QB drafts of all time. We never know. Never know 4 years from now, you know? Like, look at the Justin Fields and Zach Wilson and that draft, Trey Lance.
I mean, you know, even
Mac
guys
Jones.
like Mitch Trubisky. I wasn't a big fan of Josh Allen coming out because he reminded me so much of Mitchell Trubisky. I was like, no, don't want this. This is too wild for me. But yeah. I mean, even things like that turned around. I wasn't a big fan of Jalen Hurts either. But I don't think many people were.
Except for me, I love Jalen Hurts coming out.
You know, good for you. I'll give you that one.
It was hard to ever really know with QBs. As much as everything we say, oh, this guy's a great project because of this. This guy has these strengths and weaknesses, and the chance of this player busting is less than this guy, or this guy has a higher ceiling. It doesn't matter because QB's situation matters a lot. You know, having a great coach, having a great supporting system. There's not tons of rookie QBs, especially, who can come in right away and light it up.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as much as, you know, I do believe Mahomes is the greatest quarterback I've ever watched in my lifetime, I also feel like he's tainted quarterbacks as well because the expectation is everybody to be the new Patrick Mahomes.
Well, if you got to beat Patrick Mahomes, how else are you going to beat him without either having a god team or having your own Patrick Mahomes level quarterback?
Well,
I mean, Josh Allen, as good as he takes him to the tightrope every time, and it's hard for anybody to really beat Patrick Mahomes in that when he's playing at his best.
I just think it's made it hard to grade other players because of the success we've seen, this unprecedented success that we've seen.
It's like if you're not first, you're last mentality, you know?
Oh, very much so.
But just because you don't have your Patrick Mahomes doesn't mean you can't get a great value out of QB. Having a rookie QB is one of the most valuable things to have on an NFL team because you don't have to pay them and you can build the team up as quickly as you can to make a Super Bowl run and make a god team that could compete with playing against Patrick Mahomes, you know? Especially if that rookie QB ends up being a star, you know, like CJ Stroud. Like, I was not a CJ Stroud fan, and that dude showed out. But he had a great supporting cast, though, too.
Well, in the way we're seeing quarterbacks getting paid now, I'm starting to wonder if we're going to see more of a shift towards just drafting quarterbacks every few years again, because it kills so much cap. I mean, you look at what the Bills have had to do this year.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've had to shut house, and we're going to see the same thing happen with Miami, I think, very soon.
If they pay Tua, that's going to be for damn sure.
I mean, we're starting to see it with the Bengals. Who's another one? I mean,
I think they got one more year before the Bengals have to. Like, this is their final year before they have to start shedding.
The Ravens are making it work, but there's gonna be a day. I mean, even the Chiefs had to do it.
Oh yeah,
letting Hill go, letting some of their premier defensive players go. I mean, they've had to let a few guys go over the years.
Absolutely.
I know they didn't want to get rid of. They've also drafted very well, I think, as well.
Let's just talk about this class, though.
Yeah, man.
You have your number 10. Who is your 10th ranked QB in this draft?
My number 10 is Devin Leary out of Kentucky.
I love that.
The guy has a lot of injury history, which is definitely a reason to be a little afraid with drafting this guy. But, man, I'll tell you, he played a lot when Levis was out. So I mean, he had the experience there. A lot of the injuries he's had, though, he seems to have come back pretty fine from. I mean, he still can scramble decently. Not, I wouldn't consider him a scrambling QB. I mean, the big thing with this guy is his arm talent. Excellent arm talent, man. I mean, like, I wouldn't put him up there with Penix, but man, I would say he's only like a step or two down on an offense that wasn't very good. I mean, I really felt like he locked down the quarterback position for them as best as he could. I'm pretty sure he's a fifth year player, so he definitely has been in the system for a long time. But like I said, injuries have kind of been a riddling thing with him, and that's why he is where he is. I did see some poor decision making with him, but I felt like his biggest problem was the talent around him,
Yeah, I really liked Devin Leary's game. He actually didn't make my top 10,
and it's completely understandable.
but I am in love with his game. So he used to play for NC State. He broke the record for touchdowns for them, where that Phillip Rivers held previously. He's got a lot of great assets, especially in the short to intermediate game. Like, he is extremely accurate and pinpoint. He runs the system, like pretty much any system you really ask him, pretty well, as long as it's quick game. Like, think of like Drew Brees with Sean Payton kind of style, where not like he's as good and doesn't have the same mentality, but I'm just saying he really excels in that short accuracy game. And he's got a great eye for the middle of the field, which a lot of players don't really do nowadays in the
Oh,
NFL. Like,
absolutely.
and he's even decent outside the numbers. I mean, he doesn't have the arm strength that you kind of desire to throw deep, which is why he has
From
to
what we've
excel.
seen, I mean, like I'd like to see him with better talent and see what he does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like the group he was working with really could do the deep ball. It didn't seem like there was a lot of separation. I mean, another thing with this guy is he's okay with taking a hit. I mean, that was very
Yeah.
clear for me. I saw plenty of plays where he throws it downfield and he knows he's going to get hit. He definitely takes a hit.
Yeah. No, he has definitely the poise in that. Wow. It's hard to say because he definitely makes terrible decision making, though, when he's under pressure.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to get hit, but I think he's like, all right, I gotta get rid of the ball. I don't even know what he's thinking half the time if he gets pressured sometimes, because sometimes he'll just make really poor decisions. And he tries to scramble again, but when he's playing against more athletic players, he really doesn't have that supreme athleticism to really
Well,
get away a lot of the time. But he can extend plays. He's not terrible at it.
I definitely remember the offensive line being contained very easily.
Mm.
That was very constant. Is they were able to pull around the tackles fairly easy.
No, I definitely agree on all these points. I really don't have much more to say about him than one thing I've noticed is that he does have a high batted pass rate. He does, like,
But that could also be because of the offensive line. I mean, that's how bad they were.
I don't know how offensive line. I never really understood this. I don't know the studies for that.
But if the lineman can't pull back the defensive lineman on them, it's going to be easy for them to get their hands up. The offensive lineman should be pressing the other guy back.
Yeah,
But in many ways, they're basically bullying their way forward on the offensive lineman to bat down the passes.
that's fair because you're lowering
Which,
the angles of the throw.
in the,
But here's the other counter for that is like his arm talent. He doesn't really have these arm angles that he can adjust to very much. He does have some, but he doesn't have what you'd want out of like a great NFL QB. But I mean, I love him as a prospect in that regard, though. Like, as just like a come in, I'm not going to fuck it up for you that much. Like, I love him as a developmental backup QB.
oh yeah, I mean, and disregard Purdy in this, but like we've seen a lot of other guys, Skylar Thompson. We've seen who's the kid from the Raiders right now. I'm trying to think of what his name
Well, he
is.
was Skylar Thompson.
Yeah, well, no, Skylar Thompson's the guy from the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
But we keep getting these later round
Aiden
guys
O'Connell.
Aiden O'Connell. There's a lot of other guys that are coming in the league as like 6th and 7th round draft picks, and they're doing all right as backup QBs, and that's really where I see him. I think he could be developed a little more. He reminds me a lot of Levis. I feel like he could do a lot of the same things he can do. I think Levis is a better scrambler. definitely fit the system that they were trying to implement with Levis. It seemed pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But
Other than the deep ball being really good with
yeah.
Levis. Levis is an amazing
Well,
arm.
Levis with Wandell Robinson versus
Yeah,
Levis without
exactly.
him was a
Exact.
very different game.
Yeah,
And I
Leary.
think that's what hurt Levis in the draft last year.
Right.
All
But
right. So who's your number 10?
I will reveal that as Taulua Tagovailoa from Maryland.
He is my number 9.
Is he really?
Yes, he
Sweet.
is.
That makes things easier. Let me find
Another
him.
guy who moved up my list the more I watched.
Yeah.
I know some scouts aren't as crazy about him, but he's once again a guy who, I value as a pretty decent backup.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Especially as like a mobile backup that's like has a great head on his shoulders. He's also throws with great anticipation, kind of like how his brother does. Like he throws in open spaces.
And he can throw a deep ball
Oh
pretty
yeah.
well. But the accuracy, if I remember correctly, is all over the place. But
Oh yeah. Well, his accuracy is actually, yeah, can be all over the place, but the way he throws it, it makes gives the receivers time to adjust to the ball because he throws kind of like those high point deep balls
but
instead
also
of like
that
the lasers going 60 yards. But his arm strength is kind of middling.
but that also gives defenders a chance to adjust as well. So
Exactly.
that's where it is kind of dangerous. And I know scouts don't usually like to see that, but I mean, he's pretty good at it.
Yeah, and he's great outside the numbers. Like
Oh yeah.
I think
Oh
that's where he
yeah.
feels most comfortable actually because I forget isn't it, he's a little shorter if I
He
remember
is,
correctly.
yes.
So he doesn't really feel comfortable throwing over the middle field. Now that he can, he does do it, but you can definitely tell where he's most comfortable. When he's throwing over the middle field, he likes to move around a lot just to give himself those little extra windows, or he'll move back a little further in the pocket, which could lead to some sacks, unfortunately. But his mobility, he's very patient. He plays kind of like an NFL mentality player because he'll go through his reads, he'll extend the plays when he needs to. His ball placement is great outside the numbers. He knows leverage, like, and he can be creative when shit breaks down. And sometimes that bites him in the ass because sometimes it seems like he thinks he's more athletic than he actually is. So I feel like he gets caught sometimes.
He also does panic from time to time.
Yeah.
That was very obvious.
Especially like with a Michigan game.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched him against Penn State, I never even thought he would make my top 10 list because I saw quite a bit of panic out of him in the pocket.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen some very bad decision making when he freaks out.
But it does actually seem like he got better as the season went on.
Oh yeah.
Which and I really enjoyed seeing that because there's not a lot of offensive playmakers in this team as well, and I don't want to keep blaming that as a reason why these quarterbacks didn't play out as much. I do think there's a lot to like with this guy. I think he's very versatile and could be put into a lot of systems as a good backup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, especially in a setup where if you're in a ball control offense where he doesn't have to play from behind and press, I feel like when he is playing from behind, all his issues really start to show. But if you're keeping the game close, he doesn't feel like he has to panic as much. But I will say, like, even though his size is an issue, I'm not really worried about any like potential injuries. He's actually a little bit bulkier and like thicker than
Yeah, I agree.
you'd think. So I'm not like too concerned. I wonder how like if they want to maximize his agility by making him shave off a few pounds, or they like the fact that he's that weight so he can have the endurance. That all depends.
And I know this, doesn't go for much as far as their performance, but he definitely seems to be a really good teammate. Like I definitely noticed quite a bit that, he doesn't seem to get mad at his players when they miss a route.
Oh, he's mad at himself more than anything.
Yeah, and like when somebody gets a touchdown, like he goes down to them. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's all about like them on that play. It's not about him. And that's something that, I value that a lot because, if you can be humble as the top guy in college, you could probably do it in the NFL. And I feel like that mentality sometimes kills some of these prospects. You know what I mean? Is they were the number one guy at their college, and then they go into the NFL, and now you're the backup, and you just lose that edge.
Right. or does he play from a grateful mentality, which he definitely seems like he plays,
Absolutely.
especially being like he's in a smaller school, not smaller, but
Oh, I mean, he transferred from Alabama.
did
So,
he really?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, the minute the Tua left,
gotcha.
that ship sailed.
Yeah, he's an older guy though too, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, because I saw
Yeah,
he
I
got
think
the.
he's either a 4 or 5. I think he's a 4 or 5 year guy, if I remember correctly.
I was like, you don't become like the all-time passing leader for Maryland without being there for a good amount of years. So that's why I was kind of curious.
All right. So, well, he's my number 9.
You want me to just do my
So,
8 then, or my 9?
who's your 9? Yeah.
Okay. Well, then it's going right to Jordan Travis from FSU. Now, most of this, I will say, is due to his injury. You tear your ACL that late, and you don't even know if you're going to have, because a lot of his game is predicated on his mobility.
Yeah, he's probably one of the best mobility quarterbacks
And
on this list.
if he loses his stuff from this,
He still could be a really good scrambler.
oh, he could. I'm just saying, like, he's just not going to have that extra gear to get away from the defenders as you've seen him. Like, FSU is not where they are without him playing
No, not even close.
and utilizing his mobility as much as they did.
And they still got some studs there at wide receiver. I mean, Keon Coleman and was it Wilson? I think his name is
Johnny Wilson.
Johnny
Yeah.
Wilson. Yeah, sorry. Those guys are amazing. Like I have very high grades on both of them, and they also have a tight end there that's pretty fantastic and a great running back. So there is guys there, but his playmaking ability to me is fantastic. I actually have him on my list as my number 5 quarterback. And yeah, I know he's coming off an injury, but I actually think this is a great opportunity for him to sit behind somebody, learn for a year. But I mean, I see him as, if he didn't get this injury, he could have been in the mix with Penix, Bo Nix, and, well, okay, before people went off the handle, JJ McCarthy.
Well, yeah, you're gonna start that early, huh? You just couldn't wait any longer.
It's driving me nuts, honestly.
Well, yeah, he definitely would have been up there for me as well. Like, I have him at 9, but I think I value the uncertainty of an injury really scares me. So it's kind of just, especially with how he is. Like, you can tell he always likes to be on the move, move the pocket, which they planned around. Like, they definitely practice doing like moving pocket plays. And
I mean, he
his
gets out of tackles, I think, better than any of the rest of the quarterbacks.
yeah, and his timing on those too is like he can feel when the rush is coming really like pretty consistently.
And he
waits till he waits till the last second a lot of the time,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
great because you're allowing the full play to develop, even on scramble drills where Keon Coleman can come across the middle of the field, or Johnny Wilson has great leverage on a player, like, and you can just toss it up to him.
I would say some of his accuracy flaws could be a little inconsistent
Yeah.
from time to time. I do think the pressure that he dealt with was definitely a product of that.
Yeah.
I mean, his deep ball is pretty good. I think all in all, I thought his arm talent was definitely in the top 5. I mean, I really enjoyed a lot of things he did. I do think from time to time his decision making was kind of wonky, but I also thought the offensive system was weird as well. Like, from time to time, I was just like, why do they keep running this play? It's not working.
Yeah.
Like, they would keep running the same play, and it was driving me nuts, man.
I'm just gonna say, like, thank God he had those like bigger receivers like Coleman and Johnny Wilson,
Oh,
though,
yeah.
because he did like to airmail some balls over the middle of the field sometimes, and he basically had to utilize their entire length to get some of these balls. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that made the receivers better players, but like even some of the short plays, he kind of overthrows a little bit, and like you don't like what you said about the accuracy. That's kind of like the big thing too. I don't think he would have been. I don't think he would have beat out the other guys for me because with JJ on up, just because his accuracy compared to the other guys is not as good.
But the one thing with Jordan Travis versus somebody like JJ McCarthy, they put the ball in Jordan Travis's hands and let him run the offense. JJ McCarthy just handed the ball off most of the time. That's where for me, I can't even compare the two.
Right.
I know everybody likes JJ McCarthy right now, but I'm sorry. When yes, you won the national championship, you handed off the ball a lot more than you threw it. And if he's as good as people think he is, well, then why didn't they throw the ball more? Why didn't they put the ball in his hands when the game was on the line? They didn't. They ran the football. They played defense and they ran the football a
Yeah.
lot. I'm not saying he's a bad prospect. I just think he's extremely overrated. But sorry, on Jordan Travis, the one thing I did want to end on, like I really think he does a good job going through his reads. I think he keeps his eyes downfield very well.
Yes.
No matter how much pressure's on, he's keeping his eyes downfield, and that's you don't see that a lot with scrambling quarterbacks going into the NFL.
Yeah, you want him to.
In fact, I think he does it more than we saw Jaden Daniels do.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels definitely wanted to use his athleticism as much as possible and bail himself out. Whereas Travis, he's not running to run. He just wants to extend the plays for his playmakers to get open. Even though he could, he did have the speed to get away from a lot, and he utilized it as much like if none of them got open. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Jordan Travis's game, and I hope the injury doesn't hold him back. I hope he develops and takes the time to take for his injury to recover, to develop in the NFL. And I wouldn't be surprised in like 2 years if he's a starter. Like
I would kill for him, honestly. Like I would really love him to be a Steeler. I think there's a chance he makes it to the third round because I don't think there's a lot of heat for him. But honestly, I would not be shocked if we see him go earlier. I mean, dude, what he did for Florida State this year, I think shocked the whole college football world. I mean, it's a shame they just lost their
they even took
case.
him out of the they took him out of the playoffs.
They were going to make the playoffs, yeah, and they
because he got hurt. Yeah,
the case was this week, and it actually fell through.
What does that mean?
So it means that there's nothing that Florida State's going to get out of losing the college football playoff eligibility. And you know what? It's a shame, but there is a lot of favoritism in college football. I really hope that this new playoff system can put that to an end. But me being a Penn State fan, I've seen them do very similar things to Penn State. So, if you're not Georgia or Alabama or one of their sweetheart teams, forget making it in when it was only 4.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah, give me your 7.
Well, I have my number 8.
Oh God, man, my numbers are all fucked.
Yeah. Well, so my number 8 is Michael Pratt out of Tulane.
Ooh, he's my number 8 too.
Yeah,
that makes things easy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got good pocket presence, man. He goes through his reads as well. I think he has a decent arm. I mean, I thought his deep ball was pretty impressive, though against better talent, it showed up a little worse. But I mean, his pocket presence was really impressive to me. Like there'll be guys coming left and right at him, and he's just keeping his eyes downfield. I do think he was a little inconsistent accuracy wise. I think that really hurt him. The more I watched cornerbacks, I was like, ooh, I don't like that. Oh, there it is again. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I definitely saw quite a handful of picks.
Sometimes it also felt like his release was slower than a lot of the other guys. It seemed like it had a little bit of a wind up, which I think allowed defenders to get into the window again. Like it just completely messed up the timing of the play. So I don't know if that has anything to do too with like any like his numbers for that. It's just something I've noticed. He holds the ball like a little bit too long for me, which causes him to make poor decisions. Which in general, though, I don't think he did a lot of though. Like a huge fan of his game on is that he took what the defense gave him a lot of the time, but he did take advantage of when they were going to let him take deep shots. Like his arm talent is good enough that I think he can consistently make those deep shots, but he doesn't completely. He doesn't rely on taking deep shots all the time and being super aggressive, even though he's a completely incredibly competitive player.
I mean, like I said, the talent once again wasn't the best around him.
Right.
I think he reminds me a lot of Kenny Pickett, to be honest.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He does have smaller hands too. In case you
does he really? I didn't actually check that out. I see a lot of Kenny Pickett in him, and actually, I think he might be better. I mean, I think he's more solid than Kenny Pickett was coming out, and that really tells you where that draft class was. I mean, because this guy is projected as like a third, fourth round pick.
Yeah,
And I think that's a reasonable thing to say. I think the floor is pretty good for him. I
absolutely.
also think with the NIL where it is right now, I think this is a good way to look at what players might turn into. And, Michael Pratt could have left and gone to a bigger school, and he didn't. He stuck with the Tulane program, and I really respect that. Yeah, I think that's something with some of these players now that we got to look at and say, oh well, you shifted around to 4 or 5 schools, or even 3 schools, and man, that's starting to look like a red flag to me for some of these guys. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're jumping out every year, I mean, I understand switching once, that's fine. But if you're switching every year, like I'm gonna put it against you
Right.
because you're not gonna be able to do that in the NFL,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
if
you
you
got.
are, you're not good. And I do respect that about Michael Pratt.
I think he'd be a fantastic backup who could
Oh
who
yeah,
could start for a year or two if you want to
I'd
see
be
what he's got. Because
I'd be
I think,
completely okay with him being my
yeah,
backup.
absolutely. I don't know if he'll be. He definitely won't be that perennial starter. I don't think.
No.
But hey, we've all been wrong before. So
Yeah. Yeah, but
he's got a lot to his game that, like, especially his decision making, I think was generally pretty sound.
yeah.
And I think it can only get better in the NFL. Like having that discipline, I think is pretty noteworthy.
And he doesn't panic as much as some of these other guys.
Right. Yep.
I do appreciate that about him. All right. Who's your 7?
My 7 is your probably least favorite player in this draft. Spencer Rattler.
What do you
No,
like?
look, I like
You
his
like his criminal record?
arm talent. Does he have a criminal record?
I don't know.
Oh, I was like, you can just find one. You can just
Allegedly.
make one.
Allegedly.
I heard he stole candy bar from a gas station once.
Allegedly.
Look, let me just say this. The dude has fantastic arm talent. He's got great mobility.
I don't know if I agree with fantastic.
He has a lot of the arm angles and like play style and throwing off your back foot and still be accurate.
He does have some really good fundamentals. I
Yeah.
do agree with that.
He can play.
I do not think his arm talent is that good. I think Leggett.
It's not like his arm angles or talent is like elite. I'm just saying for where he's at in the draft compared to a lot of other years, he'd probably be a second round pick other years.
I feel like if he didn't have some of the ego issues and off the field things, I feel like we would feel a little different about him.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, some of the comments he's made to me were a little cringy about, like, he was talking about how Oklahoma wasn't as much of a NFL style offense as South Carolina. And I'm like, dude, plenty of players get drafted out of Oklahoma every single year. You don't see that many out of South Carolina. And I like the few guys who do, usually I love. I don't think that's fair. And, I know you were saying about Jordan Travis got saved by Keon and Wilson, but dude, this guy got saved by Leggett.
Okay, look.
Time and time and time and time again.
I'll say this right now. I 100% agree with you. Like, one of my biggest faults for him is when he get pressured, he does freak out and he'll throw erratic balls. Even though he has the talent, he will throw it up and he'll make bad decisions consistently. He takes deep dropbacks, which puts himself in a pressure situation to get pressured more often. I'm not a huge fan of that.
And he's not a very good scrambler either.
I mean, he's all right. Like he's not like Jordan Travis, but compared to the other backup to potential starter guys, he's got decent enough mobility. He's got a great release. Like he's getting the ball out of his hands really quick. Yeah. Doesn't fuck up the timing too much, and he can even adjust his timing mid throw to get to a spot faster or just change the angle a little bit. Like that's just why I just really like the potential of his arm, and I want to see how his mentality develops over time. What really changed me on his off the field stuff was and I'm gonna let other people listen to his video. But was watching
That's Good
Brandon
Sports.
Perna. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good sports. He did a really great description
love
on
that
his
guy.
development throughout, and how yes, he did have a crazy. He was pretty much an asshole his first like 2 years of college,
Well,
and
even in high school, I
even in
mean,
oh, and high school. Like it's all the way up until he all that came to a head when he was in Oklahoma, you know, and he got kicked off the team pretty much.
well, and he got kicked off the. I think he got expelled and kicked off the team in high school for an undisclosed reason. I looked a little into it and I really couldn't find what he did, but why? I mean, there's only a handful of things he could have done that would have led him to there, and
Yeah.
I'm very nervous to know what it is. We're gonna know better what happened then by where he gets drafted.
Right.
If we see him get drafted third, fourth round, I bet it was something petty that we don't need to worry about. But if it's something, if he's later, I feel like whatever happened then has something to do with this.
Yeah. Or they think his attitude hasn't changed much based off his interviews. But from what I've heard, his interviews have been fantastic as well. He did
I think
really great.
anybody can be coached.
He did really great in the Senior Bowl as well. Apparently, he was really great with the coaches and the other players. So all I'll say is you don't have to watch his video, Brandon Perna's That's Good Sports video now. But if you're the team that ends up drafting him
I would
and
wait.
you're really worried about his off the field rumors, watch that and probably make you feel a little bit better. But I think he has a great ceiling to be a plus starter in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be elite, but if he develops really well and he has learned from his mistakes in the past and he's not that guy anymore, I think he's definitely worth being the seventh QB off the board in this draft. So that's just me.
And if you're not like a Broncos fan and you want to feel better about your team, watching That's Good Sports, that'll bring up your spirit a little bit. That's
As
the
in,
guy. I think somebody needs to check on
yeah,
him every day.
as we all suffer together. What you gotta do?
Speaking to the guy whose team got 3 first-round picks from them. Oh, I'm very sorry here.
We don't actually no. Let's talk about that. No, I'm just kidding.
No, let's not. Yeah, he didn't make my list. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I knew he was off your board.
There's just too much with him that I just could not get behind. I definitely don't think he elevated this team. I felt like without Leggett, we wouldn't even be talking about him. Quite frankly, I really think Leggett saved him time and time and time again. I think he panics a lot in the pocket. He's smaller than a lot of these other guys, and like I said, his scrambling ability I just didn't think was that great. And I'm sorry, the way that he left Oklahoma to me is a giant red flag. They claim he got better. They're like, oh well, his teammates say he's good. Yeah, well, teammates are always going to say you're good when you're on the same team. I want to see. I'm more curious about what Oklahoma players say about him than people from South Carolina State.
Yeah.
They have to talk good about you. quite frankly. Funny thing about him is the guy that he got benched for
Oh yeah.
in Oklahoma was Caleb Williams, and I totally forgot about that. I was like, yeah, I kind of like that guy. He was a rookie. I mean, he was a freshman that year, and I was like, oh, that was Caleb Williams. Oh, I guess that makes a little sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, oh, you're saying he got benched for Caleb Williams? What a scrub.
Okay, he got benched for a freshman though. That's kind of a big deal. And I mean, it seems like the fan base in Oklahoma hated him. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they boot him right out of the stadium. So yeah,
Um,
it's all about where you value. If you don't want to take that chance on a possibility, totally understand.
So my number 7 on my list is JJ McCarthy.
7.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sorry, man. I know that I feel like somebody's going to reach for him in the draft, and we've seen these types before, naming some like Mac Jones, where they've just were good at running the system in place. And I think he was good at running the system that was in place, but it wasn't him running the offense. It was the running backs running the offense. They like when the game was on the line, they didn't use him. And that to me is enough to not put him higher on this list. I do think he has a decent arm. I do think he goes through his reads quite well. I do think that Michigan runs probably one of the closest NFL style offenses. But even with all that in mind, we've seen guys like him play there. Like Cade McNamara, I didn't think was that much worse than him. And Cade McNamara is what, a 8th or 7th year quarterback in the league. I can't believe he's still playing college football. I mean, he's a better scrambler than people give him credit.
Yes, he did.
I do definitely believe that.
His testing numbers really showed how athletic he was, actually. And I did not really pick up on that, but the more I watch him, the more his athleticism shows up. I totally see it.
And he threw very well on the run.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of tape you can look at where they show you his footwork of how he throws on the run, and it is pretty impressive. Like I got to give him that. And I know he's 7th on my list, but the next 2 guys ahead of him, I only have like a point or 2 difference between them, and that you could put those 3 in the same spot basically, as far as I'm concerned, because there's things to like about all 3 of them.
Look, I'll say this about McCarthy. So he's actually tied with my 6th place. 5. So you can choose between 5 or 6, whatever your favorite flavor is between the two.
And he's probably tied with another guy on my list.
Definitely.
If I've got this right, he's probably tied with another guy that's pretty close with mine.
He is this draft's huge mystery box.
He is.
JJ McCarthy could be anything. Like
I don't like that.
He could be. He could be.
I don't like.
He could be amazing, and
I don't like the thought that Minnesota might be moving up, trading 2 first-round draft picks.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get this guy, and we don't even really know.
I don't like the unknowns of him. Unknowns are scary. But what did Michigan ask him to do? Not a lot, right?
Yeah.
But this comes in similarities with Justin Herbert when he was coming out of Oregon. It was Oregon, right?
Yes.
They did not ask him to do a lot either. And he was just basically running the offense, doing what the coaches tell him to do. And Harbaugh is an old school kind of style, like ground and pound kind of play. He did the same thing with the 49ers when he was with them. He's been doing this kind of similar system with Michigan, as far as I could tell, these last couple of years.
And how good of a quarterback was Kaepernick?
Kaepernick was fine. He was an okay quarterback.
Fine.
Yeah, he was good. I thought he was actually above average as a quarterback. And he's very athletic. Just like I think McCarthy is a fantastically athletic as well.
He's more athletic than I thought he was.
Yeah. Harbaugh doesn't seem to like to ask his QBs to be superheroes. He just wants them to run the system. He values offensive line and gritty defense, and that's how he wants to play, and that's how he's going to continue to play.
Absolutely agree.
So that's kind of like, so he basically just didn't ask him to do it. Like, is there more to his game that we're not seeing because Harbaugh didn't want him to do it? Not because they wanted him to do it, or because he's limited, or is it because he just wants it that way? Here's the thing. His deep ball accuracy can be an issue. My other question is it because he just didn't get to practice it that often?
Or was it the wide receivers?
I don't know. I'm willing to bet if he has more time to practice his deep ball touch, and you can see him adjust to it like middle of the game. You can see him do the same thing when he was doing at the combine, doing his throws. I think all he needs to do is just practice his deep ball a little bit more. So I think he has all the ability to potential. His floor, I don't know either. He's just a big mystery.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing it's funny, him and Roman Wilson, I kind of have the same vibes about, where it's like, you could end up being really good, but it's like, what I've seen out of you doesn't make me happy.
Yeah, I just wish I've seen it. That's like, I get it. I wish I've seen it.
The fact that they consider this guy a top 10 pick all of a sudden, to me, blows my mind.
I have no idea. I don't agree at all either.
Risky.
I think the highest I would do is a late first.
Yeah, I know that's where I kind of think he's at this point.
Right. That's what I mean.
But I don't think that's where he's going.
Oh, he's definitely going like top 10, top 15.
Top 15 at the worst.
And, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm also not the one interviewing him, asking what he sees, doing these private testings and stuff like that. So he could be great.
I
But
mean,
people have made crazy decisions in the past, like Trey Lance at 3. Like this could be another one of these situations
yeah, and
where it's
that's
just
where it
like
makes me
complete
nervous.
reach.
I mean, even Zach Wilson at 2 was
Yeah, that
weird.
that too. Yeah.
And this is where like my red flags usually come in, but also my red flags made me think Josh Allen wasn't going to work out. So, I mean, just take it with a grain of salt. I just think production to me means a lot.
All this means is we all, including GMs, don't know jack and shit
As
about
Mel Kiper tells you
QBs.
every year. Mel Kiper says it all the time. Guy's my hero.
So I don't know. I really like JJ McCarthy's game. In my brain, I love his potential and what I want him to be, and I can see how great he could be. But you can't fall for that sometimes. You have to see what the reality is. So that's why I'm like, as a top 10 pick, I can't put him there, can't put him top 20. But if you want to take a shot on him, he's definitely a worthy guy to take a shot on late in the first. That's what I think.
Yeah, I could see late first not being a problem. All right, so who's your number 7?
Oh, I did my 7 was Spencer.
Yuck.
So we're gonna do my 6 or my other one that was tied.
He's also my number 6.
Nice. Let's
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, let's do
Bo Nix from Oregon.
You mean the Broncos' next quarterback?
I mean, pretty much. He does seem like
He
the
screams
type.
it to me.
Yeah, he does, especially for Sean Payton.
I hope That's Good Sports doesn't like him.
Man, you got a hard on for that.
I don't know. His misery makes me feel better about my team. And it's nice to have somebody below you.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, I know. But I like Bo Nix actually a lot. And it's funny, when the draft process first started for this year and I saw Bo Nix as a top quarterback in this class, I laughed so hard. I was like, you got to be kidding me. The guy from Auburn who got planted in the ground by Penn State. I mean, he was very highly talked about when he first came into college football, and he did not have a very good start at Auburn. Now, I don't blame that a lot on him because I think Auburn is a weird offense. I think their offense and defense to me, like I just don't get it. I think it's weird. Maybe it's because I'm a Big Ten guy, but it's just a lot of things they do just don't make sense to me. But man, watching him in Oregon, I mean, he looks like a totally different guy.
Yeah.
They just looks like they replaced him completely. I mean, his arm talent has improved completely. He goes through his reads a lot better now, and I don't think he panics like we saw at the beginning of his career. And man, his scrambling,
yeah, he
definitely got better.
He is phenomenal at like maneuvering in the pocket and just making like non-panicky, like off platform throws, getting walloped as he's like making like a touchdown pass. Like I don't know what it is about his game. Like he's super efficient.
He
doesn't make
is.
dumbass decisions. Like
No,
he has like the lowest turnover worthy play rate.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's got to be one of the best protecting the football
under pressure. Like he doesn't freak out.
And I think he didn't have a lot of fumbles as well, if I remember correctly.
No, he's getting rid of the ball quickly. 2 things I will note about him. He does like to hang on to the first read too long sometimes when he knows where it's going to show up. Now a lot of that could be because he knows he has the time because he doesn't feel the pressure and his pocket presence.
Yeah, I mean,
think is good.
Troy Franklin is known for being able to use his speed to get out of get off of corners.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of the times he's just waiting on Troy Franklin a little bit extra, but not because Troy Franklin is bad, it's because he's their best wide receiver and he's awesome.
Yeah, he's a great wide receiver.
So you want to get the ball to your best guy, but there's that, and most of his production was screen yards. A lot of it was.
Yeah.
He had the most screen yards of all QBs in this draft. Hell, even of all last year for all QBs.
Wow.
In the SEC, or not SEC, sorry, in college football. They definitely didn't ask him to do too many crazy things, but what he did do when the play broke down, he made work time after time after time and didn't really screw up the team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see him as the anchor of Oregon's offense, but I definitely think he's very complimentary to what they did.
Yeah. That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
Like I really like him now where if you asked me 2 years ago if I ever thought he'd make it to the NFL, I'd be like, "You're crazy. You're crazy." But yeah, he's definitely turned around. I mean, I'm really happy for him. I to me, he's a first round pick.
Yeah, me too.
I
He's in the same boat as like the late first, early second, because there's gonna be so much talent in this draft that might push one of these guys back.
I mean, I gotta be honest.
But
I think we're gonna see in the top 20 picks. I think we could see 5, 6 guys go off the
oh
board.
yeah,
I really think this is gonna happen, and I think it's a fair evaluation for most of them. Even as much as I give JJ McCarthy a hard time, I still think he could be a late first round pick or early second guy. I mean, I think other people love him more, but as history has shown, sometimes we just hype up things, especially guys who do very well as far as bowl games. We've seen it quite a bit where some of these guys get drafted and they shouldn't have, where they do. But yeah, with Bo Nix in mind, I mean, I think he's one of the most balanced quarterbacks in this class.
absolutely.
I think most of these guys have flaws, have a flaw that really brings most of them down. Where with Bo Nix, it's not as apparent.
It's like the only thing that really showcased it was like maybe during the Senior Bowl and his combine, you can see how limited his arm was. But you're also comparing him to Michael Penix and Joe Milton and JJ McCarthy. Like when you watch those guys throw, yeah, Bo Nix is definitely not them. Like you don't, but if you're drafting him to expect him to be that level of thrower, no, you're doing it for his brain and his ability to improvise. And I think that's worth getting a first round pick to him anyway. So
And I know this is kind of like, a subjective thought, but in his pre-snap lineups, you can definitely see him really try to understand what the defense is doing all the time. Where some of the other QBs, I don't feel like we see that, and it really impresses me. And I know he's older, so I do have a higher expectation of him doing that. I think that's something that can translate to the NFL better than maybe some of these other
oh,
guys.
100%. Like, he even calls audibles sometimes when he doesn't like what
Oh
he
yeah,
sees. Like that's something a lot of NFL scouts are going to really appreciate, that they don't have to pull that in his first year as much.
he had Troy Franklin, and I think the other wide receiver isn't terrible. But other than those two, I mean, the run game was kind of goofy in my opinion, and it would have been nice to see some more weapons there. Like, some of these guys that are higher on the board here, man, I look at the talent they had at wide receiver versus him, and it's like, yeah, we Troy Franklin, I think he's really good, but teams are double and triple covering Troy Franklin for a reason.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was very apparent. So I guess that leaves us with your number 5.
Well, let's see. We had the 5 already with JJ. We had your 6 already with Bo Nix.
My 5 was Jordan Travis.
Jordan Travis. All right. Well, there we go.
Who's
Let's
your
go to 4,
4?
which I think
Is probably the same.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. How about that?
Michael Penix, the more I watched, the more he goes up my board. So the progression is I watched Michael Penix, like watching his tape.
Vastly changed for me.
It changes. So like watching his highlights, watching his like strengths,
Watching his top
you're like,
games versus his not.
wow. Like
Yeah.
his top is phenomenal. And then you start watching a little bit more and you start seeing where his deficiencies lie. Like he looks stiff in the pocket. Does his pocket presence really match,
what he can do?
his injury history? Like I'm kind of scared about that. You're kind of like, it sours on you a little bit, but then you get to a point where he just does the good things so consistently now. It's being like a 24-year player. Now he's got some weapons around him. Like we'll give him that. Like he can be consistent having that support system, but they're not going to look as good without him throwing him the ball though either.
So it's actually kind of funny because with some of these guys who've been in the league a long time, Penix being one of them. I remember him when he played for Minnesota, and I remember saying to myself, "Ooh, that's somebody I'm gonna have to remember for the draft." And then it's like, "Oh, hey, this is that guy." It's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you a little bit." It's dude, his arm is my favorite in this class.
Oh my God.
Number
Watching
1.
him throw the deep ball.
It's beautiful. I mean, he did it to 3 stud wide receivers. I love all 3 of them.
Yeah, me too.
I'm huge on those wide receivers. I think they got some good offensive line there. I kind of like the way they run the offense, period.
Yeah,
You know
they
what I
utilize
mean? Like,
space very well. So
very
they made
well.
it as easy. That's the other thing. Like, they did make it easy on Penix.
Agreed.
You know,
But he plays hard, man.
he
He
does
he
play hard.
he's got a lot of heart for the game. It's very obvious. He looks like he's a good teammate and he's there for his guys. I don't think I ever saw him look pissed off because a play didn't go the way he wanted it. He's another guy that when somebody gets a touchdown, he's there. Like he's about it. He's excited about it. You know, when they're not doing good, he's pushing hard to keep playing hard. I know he's stiff in the pocket, and that was something that scared both me and the Otter here. You know, when he actually does run with the football, he's very athletic.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like way more athletic than you would think because the way he stands in the pocket is just very stiff. He's not moving his feet a lot, and it's very unusual. And for me and the Otter, it just was a huge red flag at the beginning. But for me, it dropped being such a problem.
Yeah, it kind of felt like I kind of construed that to being poor pocket presence when that's not really that true.
And it
I think
really
it is.
wasn't.
Yeah, I think he does need to work on his footwork.
Agree.
But
Totally agree.
I don't know. He understood how to manipulate the play, manipulate throws. He, like you said, very athletic. He can get out of the pocket if he wants to. But what I really like about him that he wants to stay in the pocket. Like he wants to be a pocket QB.
His eyes are always downfield.
Yep.
He does not want to scramble unless he has to because that's not his job.
Exactly.
He has a running back for that. He plays that was the system they played, and he was very good at it.
Yeah, and he'll do it if he needs to. Like he knows when the game's on the line, he's going to make some plays like that. Yeah, not even just like we talk about his weaknesses in that regard of him feeling stiff. Like he does have an amazing arm, like you said, the arm strength. It's not even like his deep ball that shows that he can throw the ball like 50 yards on a dime. He can fit it in amazingly tight windows too.
God. Like
going
some
in
of
the middle
those
of the field,
throws,
like
yeah.
you're like that guy's double covered. Well, or he's going into a tight zone. He's like boom, it's already there. Now I think that does show his lack of touch sometimes because when he is throwing those deep balls, he's more lasering them than he is kind of letting them fly, which is fine, but that might lead to some other issues later on. Like he should have a little bit more touch to complement other receivers on the team.
All in all, though, I mean, I think he's a stud. I'm gonna put it out there now. I think the Seahawks are gonna take him. I think this is a good time to do it. Isn't your offensive coordinator? Wasn't he with Penix?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's the offensive coordinator from Washington last year.
It seems like a good time for maybe them to draft him this year, sit behind Geno for a year, and then be your guy. Like it just feels too real to me.
No, I totally get it, and I'd be very happy to have him. Like,
and honestly, look, I know the Steelers. You know they did a lot of moves at quarterback this year. I will be jumping to the moon if he got drafted at 20, and we have plenty of needs, and I would still be very happy with him.
Now that there's not stuff to develop with him, like I think his mechanics, like we said, with his footwork, and maybe his progressions could be run a little bit more. You can tell he gets better every year. And I think that would translate almost immediately into the NFL. And even if he has to sit behind someone, like if he sits behind someone, he's an older player, so I don't really like it too much. But I think it'll do him dividends to be in those environments.
We have quarterbacks commonly staying in the league till like 38, 40. Age at quarterback is starting to not be as much of a big deal for me.
You're 100% right.
And, like that's definitely something that even this year has been a little bit of a transition of thought for me. I think there's a lot to like here, man. I really like him.
I mean, he's not going to be both of our number 4 guys without there being something phenomenal to go with him.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let's do your number 3.
Yeah, okay. My number 3 is the same as yours. So
it's not. It's not.
What?
It's not. It's not.
Oh no, it's not. I see. I know how this is going. Oh God.
I know, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, let's do mine first because I don't want to handle this right now.
Yeah.
We're going to go with Jaden Daniels for my 3.
He's my number 2.
I can't believe it.
I can't, man. I can't. No,
I mean, he will. There's rumors he's probably going to be the number 2 guy in this draft. So you're going to come out looking good at the beginning, but
yeah, whatever.
There's some red
hopefully.
flags on his tape that
There
really takes
was.
away from
In
him
fact,
being. There's just some things that really take me away from him. He has everything, though, like absolutely all the talent in the freaking world to be a great QB in the NFL. Like obviously his mobility and he's just an electric runner
he's
with the ball in his
he's
hands.
definitely the second best scrambler in this class as far as I'm concerned. He's a very good scrambler. I think he does it a little too much, and I think he wants to do it a little too
Yeah,
much.
and I think he doesn't die. He doesn't like avoid hits as much as he should. Like
Yeah, I
he's
agree.
been taking way too many hard hits
And
to
that
the
was
face. But
like now seeing his scrambling ability when he was at Arizona versus LSU, you can definitely tell he got better at it, but he still is a little unsafe on scrambling. I need to see him get better at that because in college you might get away with it, but in the NFL you're going to get hurt.
yeah,
You're going to get hurt,
oh yeah, for
and he
sure.
has a little bit of an injury history if I remember correctly. There's quite a few things I know he's already had, and I don't want to see him get ruined.
Like we don't want to see like an RG3 situation where
No,
all the talent in the world and like lighting the league on fire. And like trust me, I mean I think he's going to light the league on fire.
I
But
think so too.
but
I think he's a day one starter.
especially if he with the NFL, there's tons of weapons, and if he has really good weapons, like he knows he can utilize them very well. He can throw outside the numbers extremely well. I do not like how little he throws it over the middle, but I don't know if that is just because it's a scheme thing. He had two guys that really did well on outside, like with Brian Thomas and Neighbors.
I mean, he did have two star wide receivers, and actually, I think really three. Two coming out this year, and then there's still another guy there. Yeah, I was gonna say I saw him because
Within
they
the first
were
5 yards, though.
because neighbors they were throwing to neighbors really short towards the middle of the field quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying he. It's more of the intermediate that was bothering me. Like
You can
obviously,
almost see the route trees
I
based
know
based off of the analytics on PFF. You can almost see the route trees that neighbors and
Thomas was running.
Thomas
Yeah,
run based on just the way it's graphed out. It's so
outside,
funny.
outside, outside, out, and then neighbors run in the middle, and then run yak for like 90 yards to a touchdown.
Like, oh, deep ball on the right side. Oh, that's because that's where Thomas is.
Yeah, exactly.
But well, anyways, his throwing ability, man, I think all around is pretty good. I definitely couldn't complain about it. I didn't think it was one of the best. I definitely thought that I'd like to see him with different wide receivers and see how he does.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the place I think he's going to go is another place with stars all around.
Yeah,
At wide receiver. I mean, Jahan Dotson and
all with similar skill sets, as the other two that he had in LSU.
well, they lost their slot guy. What's his face that
Oh,
went to the
Curtis
Bills?
Samuel,
They lost Curtis Samuels, but I mean, why can't I think of his name? Their top wide
Terry
receiver.
McLaurin.
Yeah, McLaurin and Dotson. That should be a fun group.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, sorry, I don't mean to get off track here, but yeah, I mean, I think he's going to go into another system that has a lot of good wide receivers. So I think it wouldn't shock me if we see the same type of production
Yeah,
from him.
like I said, like location matters.
Absolutely.
Where he's going to go, where his supporting cast is, will the coaches utilize his strengths over his weaknesses, or will they just tell him to run the system? Like,
I don't know enough about
we'll
Dan Quinn to judge.
We'll see if that actually happens. It could be just all smokescreen shit. You know how this lion season is. It's all nothing but lying season. So I don't know. The only thing I will say is like initially when I was starting my draft analysis stuff with all the QBs, I had him up there with the other two guys.
And so did I.
That's kind of dropped over as time went on.
He's closer to Penix for me as well.
Yeah, he's just like he has those like Fields issues where he's just getting sacked too much, only really throwing when he sees it open in the middle of the field. And I mean, with the guys he had, I mean they're open, so why wouldn't you throw into that space? And
I mean, there was
him playing hero ball too many times, and it's just like it kind of just scares me. Now I think he's a better prospect than Fields was, but and I feel more comfortable with him in the top 5. That's just it. That part scares me, but that might be more recency bias for how Fields turned out with the Bears.
I mean, there was two games that were kind of outliers to me that kind of changed my opinion on Daniels a little bit, and one of them was definitely the FSU game at the beginning of the season where he just didn't seem to have the production you would like to see. And I don't get me wrong, I do think that I do think Florida State was a good team, but with Neighbors and Thompson, who I think are some of the best wide receivers we've seen come out in the last few years, it's hard for me not to be nervous seeing that kind of talent level with them. I'm trying to remember what the other game was. I think it was actually Missouri. There's another game that he didn't play well in that made me nervous. Maybe it was Alabama. Yeah, I think it actually was Alabama, where it was just like I saw a lot of plays where I'm like, man, why did you make that throw? It seemed like defenses figured out his weaknesses as the games were going on, and later in the games when he's more tired, man, there was some sloppy decision making that
Yeah.
made me nervous.
But it's cool. It's interesting because like there are some games where he learns from his mistakes mid game,
Yeah,
which I find is really
absolutely.
cool. Like there was plays where he's just making dumb throws. He doesn't understand what he didn't read the defense correctly. And then the defense is giving him similar looks, but not exactly the same. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to throw that same throw. I've already seen this. And he adjusts. And I did appreciate that level of growth even mid game. I don't how often does that happen?
And also, like, if you ever read up on that picture of his elbow that everybody was freaking out about, it's nothing to worry
I love
about.
that elbow look picture.
I mean, it was wild. I was like, what?
That's not real. I thought it was photoshopped.
I thought it was too, because like especially his bicep. I was like, what the heck?
It's like lying season's at full force today. They're making AI images of a fucked up AI.
I was just like, what? But like, a lot of reports have come out that that's not a serious issue. He just had an abscess or something on his elbow. But I mean, that's not uncommon for quarterbacks.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Go be wrong at 3. What is it?
My number 3 is Caleb Williams.
Uh,
And the sad part about it is his playmaking ability is pretty impressive. I don't think he's going to get away with it though in the NFL the way he did in college. I think it looks cute and all, but as we've seen with other quarterbacks coming in the league, if you stand in the pocket too long, you're going to get smacked. It's just going to happen, and he doesn't have the same scrambling ability as we've seen with guys like Fields and Lamar to get out of it. He stays in the pocket too long for me. As much as he was the anchor of that team, he just didn't seem like he was enough of an anchor. He just doesn't, for the guy who they claim is this generational talent. I just don't understand why it was so hard to see him gain more success in college. Their defense was bad, and there's no denial there. But they had some good offensive linemen. They had some decent wide receivers. The running game wasn't terrible, but yet it just seems like when it came to playing against teams of the same level or better, he couldn't overcome it. And for being the first overall pick in almost everybody's mind, that doesn't sell me. Like if you're not doing it in college, you're not going to do it in the NFL.
I mean, obviously he's my number 1. I'll preface this with when he makes bad decisions or he's trying to make a hero play, he sometimes makes that decision 10 times worse than it needs to be.
Oh yeah.
He is probably one of the most ugliest tapes for a guy that you have at this level of play, especially going first overall. But man, this guy had to be perfect in order to win a lot of games because his defense was such a liability a lot of the time.
They were hot garbage.
And as soon as the team goes up, like the opponent's team, like it's a fucking foot race at that point. He's got to be perfect every time. And I think they had a piece or two on that offensive line, but that interior was doing him no favors. He was getting pressure within like 2 seconds a lot of the time. He had to even get out of the pocket and make hero plays consistently.
But he also had players at the receiving core that could give him that, like Brendan Rice. I mean, I think Brendan Rice played well.
Brendan Rice played well, but he wasn't an elite separator like that Jaden Daniels had.
Oh no,
like
it's nowhere in comparison.
He had
those two.
He had in order for Brendan Rice to even make some of these to get these catches. Caleb had to throw them in perfect spots, and
Agreed.
some of these plays, like he's making
amazing throws.
For every terrible ass play you see him make, he's making like 5 magic happen on the field sometimes with his ability just to create production on this offense and just to even keep up with the other team. I don't know. I think even in an offense that was more well structured or even more well built, when he doesn't get pressured, he does stay in the pocket and make reads very well. He goes through progressions. He always tries to even stay in the pocket when some of the plays break down. Like he tries to manipulate the pocket. Like he just does everything on a base level that you'd want a good QB to already play at. Then he adds like insane, crazy plays that can bail a team out that definitely didn't deserve to be bailed out a lot of the time.
I think one of my favorite plays of all the tape we've watched so far this year was actually a flea flicker play that he did where when he got the ball, like when the ball was tossed back to him on the flea flicker, it went out of his hands so quick and it went for like a 50-yard bomb downfield. It was amazing. Like that throw was, my jaw hit the floor. I mean, it was amazing.
And he's got tons of those. Like
he does. I mean, his arm talent is very good. Like there's no denial there. But there is another issue that I have with this guy that feel is a huge concern, and it's his character. I mean, there's been plenty of things that we could look at and it's like, oh, well, the media is just blowing this up. But man, when he lost there at the end of this, towards the end of the season, and it was their eligibility to get into the college football playoffs, and he's crying hysterically in his mom's arms. I'm all about passion. I'm a passionate guy. I've had the waterworks on for things in the past, but when you cry hysterically in your mom's arms during a football game in front of a crowd of God knows how many people, you're supposed to be a leader of men. That's not being a leader of men. You don't do that in front of everybody on the field. How are you going to lead a football team doing stuff like that? If you did that in high school, I wouldn't judge you. You do that as a 3-4 year player in college football, like you're an adult man. I can't see that, man, in my starting quarterback. That's insane to me. That's a weird character flaw, and there's plenty of other weird things that have been said. I mean, I know we're in a weird era with the NIL agreements, but I don't know, man. There's plenty of character things, off and on the field that make me nervous. I mean, I'm trying to remember which game it was. There was a game. There was one game where they were getting blown out by a team, and he's kind of on the sidelines, like he doesn't seem really upset or anything like that. Like, oh well, it is what it is. But then another game, he's like hysterically crying about it. It's like, how do you go from that to that? It's weird to me.
We've talked about this off air before. I personally think that stuff is kind of being blown out proportion. I'm all about the emotion that you have for winning a game,
and I am too.
And it's like,
but it's how.
Sure, I'm totally fine with him. His mom is source of comfort for him is there. Like not a lot of people can say they even have a mom to cry to that went to the game. It's like so I wasn't throwing shots at anybody. I was just saying.
The shade I just felt.
You said more about your silence than anything. But all I'm saying is like not a lot of people get that. Like, and he has, a great support system around him. And I've seen like NFL players fucking cry. I've seen NFL players throw
like
tablets down in a hissy fit of rage that looks just as childish sometimes, if not more so. Doesn't make him a bad prospect because that happened. I don't consider that a red flag. It just means you have emotion. You're getting that shit out in any way you can, as long as it's not in a violent rage. Cool. I'm all for it. He's a young kid. He's 21 years old, still learning how to even process a lot of this shit. And he's he's going to be a star. Like, how do you even process any of that stuff? And you have those kinds of expectations in your life. So I'm not going to hold any of that stuff against him. If you do, I understand. I feel like I know some people do. Like you're honestly, I've talked about with other people. You're not the only one. It's a viewpoint on how you want to be led into battle pretty much, on a consistent basis. I just don't see an issue with it. So,
well, and
those are just the reasons I am. And you could be right. It could be because his character isn't that good. And we're going to find out in 4 years that he's not a great
Yeah.
leader.
I
But
mean,
we could find out in a couple of years that's like, yeah, I mean,
that
they
wasn't that
respect
big
that
of a
about him.
deal. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
But with that in mind, the other reason why I could only put him on the list where I put him is because of the guy that
Otter.
has at number 2. Because you don't like good football players.
I do. I actually really like who I have at number 2 a lot. And I think the hate on this guy is actually going overboard, to be
It
honest.
drives me nuts, man.
Um, like I get that people aren't as high on him,
But I do
but
think
he
a
has
lot of
all
his
the
issues are more external than they are internal
yeah, but
towards him.
again, I'm not really worried about the internal or the external stuff I think will directly affect his success in the NFL if he doesn't get them fixed.
Oh yeah.
His footwork, and you'll probably hear this from tons of people, is just very bad, poor. Not sorry, I can't say that. I want to say that it needs significant improvement for it to not be a issue in the NFL.
Well,
Because
our
I don't think it was necessarily bad. There are plays where he's like he does everything perfectly and he looks like the top 5 QB he's going to be.
well, before we go any further, the person we were talking about is Drake May
Yeah.
from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Sorry, we did not say that. But
So we just got right into it where it's like,
look,
tell you why.
I got to be honest with you. Drake May to me is one of the best quarterbacks I've ever watched. The only other quarterback that I've watched coming out of college that I thought was just absolutely elite was Joe Burrow. And I'm not saying he's like Joe Burrow, but he has that kind of talent
Like
level to me.
he derives similar feelings.
Absolutely. And you got to understand something. So this guy was a starter last year as a freshman, and this year was only his sophomore year. His freshman year, he did have Josh Downs, and I think he had somebody else. Was it Deion Green or? But he had 3 solid wide receivers 2 years ago, and man, he lit it up left and right. I mean, I remember watching Josh Downs, and I was like having a conniption about how amazing this freshman quarterback looked when I was watching, and I just am amazed at the talent, at how young he is, how quickly he came into college football and played that well. He did have a little bit of a step back this year, but I also think the talent level North Carolina is a heavy portion to this. This is another guy that stuck with a school that lost a lot of talent and probably could have gone basically anywhere he wanted. His game, all in all, like there is not much weakness. His scramble's not terrible.
I think he's got great scrambling ability.
I think his decision making most of the time is pretty good, but I also feel like he was on a team that really had one guy to throw to, and that was a problem. And the run game wasn't good, and the offensive line couldn't block me most of the time. The offensive line was awful. In fact, I think it's one of the worst I watched all season.
Yeah,
they were bad.
There's a lot of parallels between him and Caleb, which, because they're both, what makes them both great prospects are very similar. If Caleb was probably a 9 or a 10 for me, I think Drake May is maybe like a 7 or 8 in a lot of these categories, but they had also faced similar problems in what people would criticize them for. And there's a lot of people saying that he shouldn't even be in the top 5 picks.
That's
crazy.
And
it blows my mind to even think that way because he has the ideal size. He has great mobility. He throws accurately pretty consistently, other than where his footwork is poor.
His reads are good.
His reads are generally good.
And he's getting better at reading the defenses. Like I've definitely noticed from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah.
A significant growth in that category.
Even his post-snap processing has been
that's
way better developed. And, he, compared to Caleb, he doesn't put the ball in harm's way as much as even he did.
No.
But it's just like, I just think when his throwing style actually looks worse than Caleb's, just because, there are plays where he's throwing easy passes right into the dirt, right at the receiver's feet. Like, and that's not the receiver's fault.
But he's also running away from 4 defensive players.
This is on clean plays too. Like two, like I'm talking about quick outs where he doesn't have to worry about the pressure. He just has to make the throw, and it's his mechanics. His mechanics need work, and I don't think there's really any way around that other than developing it. I think, but those things can be developed. Like he could have a Josh Allen-esque trajectory and reach those. Like that's the kind of ceiling I think he might have, just because he has all the intangible. I don't think he's athletic as him.
No, and he doesn't have the cannon that
Yeah,
Josh Allen has,
but I
but
don't think
many people
his floor
have
is
that.
also better than Josh Allen's coming out too.
Absolutely,
So
no
it's like,
question. But
but
he's so young.
yeah,
Like that alone, I think, has to play into this. I do think he's a day one starter, no question, whoever drafts him. But I think the first year will be a little rocky to get started. There's there's not an argument there. But I mean, I just think the talent is one of the best I've ever seen. It's a shame that they really didn't build well around him going into this season. I'm very surprised. I would think players would want to play with his style quarterback, but we really didn't see it. All in all, his character seems really good. He seems to be a really good team guy. The only thing that I would definitely say makes me nervous is he lost his last 3 games at UNC, and as we've stated, trust me, this is not on him mostly. But when the game was put in his hands, because there was no other choice, he had to play hero ball.
yeah.
There's no question. He didn't have a choice.
That's one of those other parallels I saw with him and Caleb. Like Caleb had to play hero ball, and so did he. Like now, I will say specifically NC State game, he kind of caused them to be in that hole, throwing a couple interceptions early.
He did, yes.
So that's like the one game that if you want to like, you can throw that game out because that's usually the outlier. I think he's a fantastic prospect, and like for me, a quality top 5 round pick that you want to see take a shot on and develop, especially if you're a team that needs it. Like I would be shocked if, Washington didn't take him at 2 because he like having that kind of way to develop him with those weapons. Like I don't want to go. I don't want him to go to a team like the Patriots again.
I just
with
feel like
bad.
Sam Howell kind of will scare him. I like the fact that they had Sam Howell and they don't seem very happy with him
Yeah, I
taking
guess
another
fair.
quarterback
from the same
from the
school.
same school, from the same
Yeah,
offense.
but different regime though, totally different group of people.
Yeah,
So
but I can see why they might not.
right.
Do I agree? No, absolutely not. He's my number 1 quarterback, and he would be a lot of years.
Yeah, that's without question.
I mean, I just think his arm talent is fantastic. He can scramble. He puts the ball in his hands, and he doesn't get frustrated most of the time. I know you and I have talked about it quite a bit, but I see a lot of Justin Herbert in him. I mean, that's the player that he reminds me of. There's probably somebody who's a better comp, but I mean, that's who really comes to my mind.
You're gonna hate my comp for him.
Am I gonna beat you up?
Probably Carson Wentz.
No.
He's got a similar style of play
I
sometimes.
don't know if I could say that. The scramblability of those two, I think, is a little different.
I think they're pretty close to the same.
I think the decision making by May is way better.
Yeah, well,
way better.
Post like Wentz early on had some similar abilities and decision making. Like he didn't make poor decisions until late in his career.
I just remember Wentz coming out and not being insane about him. I mean,
yeah,
it's the number 2 pick.
Yeah, and he'll be ideally for me the number 2 pick in this draft too. I'm just saying. That's just one thought. You can beat me up after this anyway.
Just by the smile on your face, I knew he was still going to be number 2.
Yeah, of course he was. There's nothing was going to change on that. He's clearly. He's clearly better. For me, it's like initially it was those 3 guys all super close together, and you can mix and match them any way you want. Now for me, it's like Caleb, far and away the best for me. Drake May, and then a little like a significant gap after him will be Jaden Daniels for me, and then Penix is kind of close to Jaden Daniels, and then you can drop it further for Bo Nix, and like those are just how the tiers are set up in my head, and that's how this is how it developed.
I would still have Drake May number 1 on my list no matter what, but I do think Caleb Williams is the second best. It's just this off the field stuff scares me. That's really where I had to put him at number 3, where I just don't feel as confident in you day one to go into a tough situation being the number 1 QB as I do the other 2.
Right.
I mean, that being Jaden Daniels and Drake May.
Totally makes sense.
But
I
I'll
can get
tell
that.
you,
You value that
this
stuff very much, so
this draft class, though, I mean, I know we started with it this way, but man, I just have to emphasize this is one of the best I've covered so far.
yeah, it's gonna make me so excited to see how this year starts with
Yeah.
all of them in their respective roles and teams. How about we wrap this up with give me one guy outside your top 10 you'd like to give a little shout out to.
I'm kind of surprised my guy didn't make your list. I thought he would, and I bet he's going to be the same choice that you were gonna choose.
Please don't
It's
know.
Joe Milton.
Fuck you. I should have told you mine first.
It was hard to not put him on my list because his athletics are just absolutely elite. He reminds me a lot of AR-15 from last year, man. He kind of has a lot of the qualities I liked about Anthony Richardson coming out, but he's a lot more raw. He's a very, very raw prospect. I think he's a project day one.
Oh yeah,
And I think
he can't hit the broadside of a barn
he
sometimes.
he can't. Yeah, I mean his accuracy is rough, but he does have a cannon. And man, he's 6'4"?
He's
6'6",
huge, but
something.
watch
Somewhere
just
in that range. He's huge.
all you need to know is watch his combine throw, and it'll equal big arm throw good, and then he just fucking nails it down the field. Not accurately, but yeah, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I love this guy's athleticism. I wouldn't be shocked that that he could have a chance of, being something in this league. But I think the boomer or bust of this guy is what kept him off my list.
Oh yeah, he's definitely not like he's a late day 3 pick for me.
Yes, he's day 3 for me as well.
So because you took him, I really don't feel like talking about anybody else. So I'm just going to mention Sam Hartman because he's really, really good looking.
You don't want to talk about Slovis?
No, I don't want to.
Slovis.
I don't like Slovis at all. But
neither of us like.
I will say I'm just gonna say minus Sam Hartman and just look up a picture of Sam Hartman, and it's like a supermodel's playing football. There you go. That's all I'm going to say. So, anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Let us know what you guys think if we're missing out on anybody, and
look up Caleb Williams crying.
Yeah,
tell me what you think.
No, look up Joe Milton's deep ball. That's what you want to do.
A lot of people have watched this video after I've said this, to debate on this discussion between me and the Otter, and they don't agree with him on this. I'll tell you.
Yep, it's
they see it and cringe the way I do.
It's a very non-chalk pick, huh? Non-chalk opinion. But anyway, thanks for listening. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think.
Send us chalk.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I'm hungry.
He loves it. He loves chalk.
Anyway, bye.
Bye.